We're ready to begin. Thank you everyone for logging on and joining us for the town hall regarding the opening of school in the Berlin Central School District. This is the second of 3 town hall meetings that were required by the governor. Our next one will also be on August 20th at 1 p.m. for those who can't make an evening presentation. Tonight, we're going to go through the reopening plans as they were posted online and provided to the State Education Department and the Department of Health as approved by both entities. So we have with us tonight the administrators, the entire administrative team that worked with parents, teachers, community members, Department of Health, and others, putting together the reopening for Berlin schools, both the middle school, high school, and the Berlin Elementary School. So without much further ado, let's start the presentation. Next slide, please. Okay, so the purpose of this meeting is to review the plan that was submitted. I've already kind of spoke to that. This is the first of the 3 virtual meetings for parents. We've also had meetings with the teachers as required. So we'd like the parents and community to understand that though our plan has been developed in collaboration with teachers, administration, and parents, aspects of this plan are still subject to change by the governor's office, the Department of Health, and the New York State Education Department. As you know, sometimes we get updates as late as 5 p.m. on Friday for implementation on Monday morning. So without further ado, next slide, please. The plan was developed with the guiding principles in mind. First and foremost was the health and safety of the students and staff. Of course, that's always been our top priority, but especially during this pandemic crisis, that was our first and top priority, the health and safety. We also were looking at how can we provide the best learning experience for all the students that are in our district. Those students are students that are enrolled in other schools, students that are enrolled in CTE programs, and also students that require special services, and those students with IEPs. So we looked at the range of students, and we provided what seems to be best for all students at this point. The social emotional wellness of our staff was also considered, and we do have support staff that will be making additional preparations for those staff and students who do need to have a little bit of extra support in their social emotional wellness. We know that it's essential for students during school time, but it's also essential as they follow through and are successful in life. We will be following all of the guidelines that are provided by Center for Disease Control and the New York State Department of Health. Those are the 2 guiding organizations really that we got support from, including many detailed plans on how to administer a classroom or instructional program with social distancing in mind. So the last thing with the principals was that, you know, we firmly believe that collaboration, communication, and coordination with everybody basically will ultimately determine the success of our district. Next. So with this in mind, we have to kind of put it out there that we will be requiring face coverings in public, as does New York State mandate, and as the reopening guidance certainly highly recommends. So if a person comes into our building, they will be required to wear face masks and face coverings, whether or not they are coming in from the outside, or those adults that are in the building will also be required to have their masks covering their nose, mouth, and chin. So we will do as best we can to enforce that policy. Of course, we want to make sure that we can social distance whenever possible, and we will adopt any new measures to ensure the wellness of our staff and students. We will adapt to the changing data as needed. We are collecting data every day on students, the number of students that will be learning remotely, as well as the number of students that will be coming into school for live instruction. We will also adjust our processes, our programs, and our protocols whenever it's necessary to ensure the best conditions possible for our learners and for all of our staff members. Next. So the plan was developed by many individuals that were participating on subcommittees. The subcommittees were identified through various means, but predominantly through the different resources that we had received on the proper and correct way to open schools, taking into consideration the teaching and learning environment, the physical, food, and transportation that's required, the health and safety of all students and staff, the social emotional wellness, special programs, and communications. We did invite members of the community at large, as well as parents and staff members, particularly the teachers and administrators, to join us on these subcommittees. And each subcommittee was spearheaded by a chairperson or co-chairperson in order to gather the thoughts and the information at weekly, sometimes sometimes twice a week meetings. And that was all then put together on paper and discussed and distributed on Thursday mornings with facilitators. So the facilitators, who were the co-chairs or the chair people, also met separately to then go over the requests and recommendations of each of these subcommittees. Next. So just a quick timeline for development. This really occurred within a month. If you think about it, the state did not release their guidance well into July. Mid-July, they released their guidance, which we then had to read through. And then on July 29th, there was a summary document that we created for parents and staff, and that was distributed on our website and through Facebook and through emails. The next day, the complete plan for reopening was submitted to New York State Education Department and the Department of Health, and communicated again to parents, staff, and others, both through the Facebook website and through email. So we really had 14 days basically to come up with a plan based on the guidance issued on July 16th and it having to be put onto our website by July 30th. And on August 4th, can you just back up for a second? On August 4th, we did send out a parent survey to establish the data and to give us some ideas for building level instruction and transportation. We got a significant amount of data from those returned surveys, and the next slide will go through that very quickly. All right, so what we really wanted to know is, if you had the opportunity, would you send your children back for on-campus instruction as outlined in the plan, or would you prefer to have remote instruction only? At this point, we have about 2/3 of our families or parents filling out the surveys for their children. About 2/3 want to come back for in-school instruction according to our plan, and about 29% want to have remote instruction only. Next. Likewise with transportation, a little bit different in terms of numbers. About half, or roughly 53%, a little bit more than half, wanted to ride the school bus as outlined in the plan. And about 47% of the parents indicated they would be dropping off or sending their students in by their own transportation method. So it's about 50-50. So we saw about a 50% reduction in ridership on our transportation, which really helped us quite a bit when considering that we can only hold a certain number of students on those buses. Next. One of the last things we really wanted to learn about and try to understand was the amount of internet access at home for each child. So with the parents responding for every child, we did ask whether or not more than one person can access the internet at the same time. And about 79, 80% of the families responded, yes, they could have multiple family use at the same time. About 18% said only partial family use when not all the members are on at the same time. And just a very small percent could not fully participate, and even smaller percent did not have Wi-Fi or internet access in their house. Next. The next few slides will be picked up by the administrators. I just want to introduce the on-campus instruction. We will be having on-campus instruction live at Berlin Elementary School and at the middle school, high school. Specific details will come out in the next couple of slides. I believe we'll have first Mrs. Tracy Kent do the Berlin Elementary School, and then Miss Jody Sullivan will pick up with middle school, high school. So next slide. There you go.
Good evening, everyone. This is Tracy Kent, the principal at the elementary school. Thank you for taking the time to join us tonight for this presentation. Berlin Elementary will be offering two models of instruction. The first will be our in-person instruction. This will be offered Mondays, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays. It will be full days. We will follow the same time schedule that we've followed in the past. And all of our students will be remote on Wednesdays. The other options for families is our remote only option. So this means that all of the students' instruction will be delivered in a remote manner. Families have the option of choosing either of those. We're getting very close to having information for almost all of our students as we near the end of this week. All of our students will receive instruction in art, music, library, technology, and physical education. As much as possible, those teachers will be pushing into classrooms so that we can minimize transitions of our students traveling through the hallways and interacting in different spaces. We're also including a 30-minute daily recess time for students. It's important that our students have the opportunity to have some fresh air and movement throughout their day. We will be creating zones on our playground. This has actually already been mapped out so that each class will have its own zone where they will play and not cross with many homerooms. Breakfast and lunch will be eaten in classrooms. And again, this is being done so that transitions are minimized for our students. The remote only instruction may be delivered by several teachers, including collaborating teachers from Questar 3 and other local school districts. Once we have solid numbers on those students who have chosen remote only, the district will be pursuing the remote only options. Next, please. So I wanted to show you a couple of pictures just to get a sense of some of the work that's been happening throughout the summer by our tremendous custodial staff to ready the buildings with all of these changes. The picture on the left is a BES classroom that happens to have desks, although the majority of our classrooms do not have desks. They utilize tables. You can see that the desks have been spaced out to allow for social distancing. The center photo does depict a classroom that has tables. Again, those tables have been spaced 6 feet apart to allow for that social distancing. The photo to the right shows a barrier. This is actually the exact barriers that have been ordered by the district. So students who are sitting at tables and desks will each have their own individual barrier. While they are seated behind that barrier, they will be able to remove their mask. But if a student needs to get up and use the bathroom, sharpen a pencil, they would then have to put that mask back on as they move around the classroom because they're no longer behind that barrier.
Okay, thank you, Tracy. Hi, everyone. Thank you for being here. This is Jody Sullivan, principal of Berlin Middle High School. I have a 6th grade only Berlin learning model to share with you first. This is very similar to the BES model that Tracy just shared. Our in-person instruction for 6th grade does feature a 4-day in-person option. So students will attend in person Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday. All Wednesdays are all remote for all students. If you choose the remote only instruction, this instruction will be delivered remotely on all days. We will work to provide a schedule and make sure that we have clear communication as to when your child is supposed to be attending which classes. It's important to note that that remote instruction mainly will be delivered through the use of technology, especially Chromebooks at the middle high level, Schoology and Zoom virtual meetings like this one. The 6th grade students will also have a 30-minute lunch. Breakfast and lunch will be eaten in classrooms. Now, the difference here, one thing to point out is depending on the course or schedule that a student has, they may be transitioning to different classrooms at times as needed for proper equipment, materials, and classroom environment. For example, PE, art, there are certain level art classes where art supplies really cannot be pushed around on a cart. They'll need to be in the art classroom. There are band and chorus classes that need to be separated further than 6 feet, and that is our intention to do so that they can practice. We have large enough space to accommodate that, probably in the auditorium is our intent. And some science classes are just some examples of classes that students may need to transition to in order to have the proper equipment to learn their content. Also, at the middle high, we do have the remote only instruction possibly being delivered by collaborating teachers from Questar, but we will do our very best to deliver them by Berlin teachers whenever possible. The middle high school 7th through 12th grade hybrid model is the most complex model that we have. Our in-person instruction is going to be split up. So every grade level, based on families' answers to the school reopening survey, we are making those same phone calls as Tracy mentioned at the elementary school. We've been working hard throughout the day, yesterday and today, to start really making sure that we have a good understanding of how many students in each grade level are planning to come in person versus how many in each grade level are planning to opt for remote only instruction. Once we have a good number at each of the grade levels, 7 through 12, then we will be able to split into 2 cohorts. Knowing that green and gold really are truly the colors of Berlin, we intended to call the cohorts the green and the gold cohort. We learned just a couple of days ago that that does not work for the computer system. So unfortunately, gold is becoming yellow for this school year. My apologies in advance. I know that the technical color is gold, but we're going with yellow for this year, just calling it that instead of gold. We'll name that cohort yellow. So the green cohort will be half of each grade level approximately who choose in-person instruction, and those students will attend physically in person on campus on Mondays and Thursdays and receive their remote instruction on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. The other half will be the gold cohort or the yellow cohort, They will meet in person on campus on Tuesdays and Fridays and go remote on Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday. That remote only instruction may be happening synchronously or asynchronously with the other classmates who are in person. It will depend on the course, it will depend on the teacher, and it will depend on our preferred technology for that content delivery as well. All instruction will be delivered remotely on all days if your family does choose the remote only option at the 7th through 12th grade level. Everything else is pretty much the same. 30-minute lunch, breakfast and lunch will be eaten in the classrooms. We will do a day 1, day 2 rotation. Some classes like lab, PE, some of the arts and music classes, technology, do rotate on a day 1, day 2 rotation. To provide equitability in the course rotations, Monday will be assigned a day 1, Tuesday will be assigned day 2, Wednesday will not have an assigned number day, Thursday will be a day 2, and Friday will be a day 1. Depending on the courses and schedules, students may be transitioning to different classrooms at times. The transitioning is more likely at the high school level, where different classrooms have proper equipment, materials needed for content learning and for hands-on practice. So we will minimize our transitions and we will manage them in the hallways as organized as possible, but those students may need to transition to classes. Remote-only instruction, again, may be delivered by Berlin teachers, collaborating teachers from Questar 3, and or other school districts. It's really important to us that your students have a certified teacher and the proper certification teaching them at all times. Just a couple of images of what the classrooms look like with their 6-foot distancing. We've got a computer lab here that in the middle that is utilized by one of our Spanish teachers. Over on the right is a small group learning environment. That's a reading classroom, an example of reading and a small group environment, how that would look. And then all the way over to the left is just a glimpse of what a classroom looks like at the 6-foot distancing. Once students are seated, they are able to remove their masks as long as they're situated and seated at their desks.
Good evening, everybody. This is Fred Hutchinson, Director of Curriculum Instruction and Assessment. Thank you for joining us. We have elected to leave Wednesdays as a remote learning option day for all students in order to allow for professional development for staff, to allow for flexibility in systemic planning, and to provide for any additional cleaning that may be needed. Regular cleaning will occur throughout the week, but this is, ever-changing dynamics, it seems. All teachers, grades 4 through 12, will use Schoology learning management system to communicate with students and families, to record grades and assignments, to collaborate with colleagues, and to provide access to online instruction and resources. One thing that we heard from parents last year was that we had too many platforms open, so we're trying to gather everything into a central location to make communication more effective and easier for parents, students, and staff to track. Finally, all teachers in grades K through 3 will be using a new platform called Seesaw as their learning management system. And that is going to be employed both in the 4-day on-campus instruction as well as for any students who are remote and that Wednesday when everyone is remote.
Good evening, everybody. This is Samantha Brewer, the Director of Exceptional Education. So just to briefly talk about our students with disabilities and some other special populations, we did make the decision to bring all of our students with disabilities back for 4 days a week. At the middle high school, if your student has an IEP or an individualized education plan, your student will be, and if you are receiving in-person instruction, your student will be receiving instruction 4 days a week. And we did that to be able to deliver, the proper educational supports and to make sure, students are receiving their special education services to the greatest extent possible. It is important to note that during this time, the state has continued its allowance of flexibility in terms of the delivery of services on an IEP or an individualized education plan. They have allowed us flexibility in terms of the location of the services, the duration of the services, the method of delivery, and some other areas. So it is important to note that if your student does receive special education services, whether they are in person or whether your family is choosing remote instruction, that your services might look a little bit different from what is actually written on their IEP. Much like was stated on some of the other slides, related services, our providers are advised to push into classrooms as much as possible to reduce transitions and to keep students within their cohorts. So again, your students' IEP might say that they are supposed to receive speech services outside of the classroom, but given the circumstances, they might be receiving their speech services in the classroom, for example, again, to reduce the transitions and to reduce exposure. RTI, response to intervention, at the elementary level will be provided. It will be a combination of push in and pull out. Again, our ultimate goal, our priority is health and safety. So again, we're trying to reduce those transitions and keep students within their cohorts as much as possible. At the secondary level, in terms of AIS or academic intervention services, we will still be providing to those services to students based on data analysis and record review. Typically, those decisions are made based on June and August Regents exam results, but both the June and August Regents exams were canceled. So we're going to be using other data to inform our decisions about who will be receiving AIS at the secondary level. And some other of our high needs or at-risk students in grades 7 through 12 may also be scheduled 4 days a week. So for example, we are inviting our school within a school students to return 4 days a week. And again, this comes from the guidance from New York State that specifically references high needs or at-risk students and prioritizing those students for in-person instruction as much as possible.
Okay, it's Fred again. Now we're going to go into some of the remote instruction. And before we go into what our remote program is, we just want to kind of distinguish between the two. So every student will be learning remotely on Wednesday. This is different than those students who opt for complete remote learning program. So there is an element of remote learning for all students on Wednesday for about 50% of our cohort in 7 through 12 on those alternate days. But then if a student is electing to go remote completely, that's really a separate program. It's really like developing a school schedule alongside of our existing schedule. So if you are opting into the fully remote instruction, we would like you to, you may have indicated this in a survey. If you have not, we would like you to complete the request form by August 21st. You will be receiving letters shortly to indicate what information we have regarding your intention. And then that will help us to double check to make sure that we have all the correct information. But those request forms we do need by the 21st. There's an awful lot of scheduling that has to occur. Okay, so remote learning program. So in general, a remote learning program will be substantively similar to the on-campus learning program. However, there are going to be considerable differences in the delivery model, obviously. Teachers are assigned to classes on campus. If a student can't attend this synchronous learning at the same time that that class is scheduled for whatever reason, there's several reasons why, then that student will have to be educated asynchronously. In other words, at a different time during the day. And we are working with teachers. They have been incredibly flexible, very adaptive, and wonderfully creative as we approach this. But they're going to work with students to determine how best to achieve that learning. It may not look like period 1, period 2, period 3, period 4, etc. It might be that a student has to access it off schedule. And then they will be able to communicate using Schoology or email with that teacher to clarify questions. But it substantively will be the same. And again, that delivery is going to be a little different. Our ultimate objective is to provide students with the resources and instruction to master the course content. So the expectations that parents should be aware of is that for remote learning, kindergarten through 5th grade, it's going to be about 1 to 2 hours on computer a day. There will be other time when students are completing assignments or projects or activities, but you're looking at about 1 to 2 hours online on computer a day. For the 6 through 12 program, we will not be asking students to do more than 4 hours of online computer-based instruction. And again, they will have substantial work to do outside or off screen that will help to extend their learning experiences. The data we're compiling from the students and the teachers is going to help us to prepare as much as possible as we develop the final aspects of the format and schedule. And if you have not done so, again, please make sure that you either complete that survey that is still active, I believe, or that you complete the remote learning instruction form, which can be found on our website as well as on Facebook. The one thing to know is that the remote only instruction, we're hoping that it's delivered by Berlin teachers. However, depending on numbers and logistics, it could be provided by Questar teachers or some aspect of collaborating teachers or a number of teachers. One of the luxuries that you give up by being off campus is that it's not necessarily, quote unquote, your child's teacher all the time. We will have to adjust and adapt as we go. For remote instruction, and I mentioned this a little bit, there are really 3 approaches, and that's the synchronous learning, asynchronous learning, and individualized learning. Synchronous learning is that students will log in and join the class in real time. There will be students in the classroom, the camera will be on the teacher, and the remote instruction will be like a student virtually sitting in a classroom. Asynchronous learning is that a student will log in to view pre-recorded lessons. These may be 5 to 10 minute videos. They may be an entire lesson recorded by a teacher. Again, we're offering that flexibility to our staff so that they can provide the best instruction they can. It's not one size fits all for our teachers as much as it is not one size fits all for our students. And then those lessons will be posted on the LMS, the Learning Management System, whether it's Schoology or Seesaw. Finally, individualized learning. We do know that we have a few students that just do not have consistent enough access to the internet. And they're going to have to work with the individual teachers, and the individual teachers are going to have to work with those individual students to figure out how to best provide that instruction. We are, again, we're asking that teachers work with those individual students who are engaging in the remote learning program to determine the best options for their learning. And flexibility, really, it has been what has gotten us this far and will get us through the rest of this.
Good evening, it's Karen Capazzi, Business Manager and Administrator for the Business Office, Technology, Food Service, and Transportation Departments. Food Service, we are currently working on the plan. So as far as specifics, they're not coming out yet, but they will be soon. So breakfast and lunch will be provided. In a, I should delay, let's do that. Breakfast and lunch will be provided in a fashion that ensures appropriate social distancing, including allowances for eating in classrooms. All enrolled students will be provided with school meals each school day, whether in attendance at school or learning remotely. Then, as I said, the process for food stations and delivery is currently being developed. Accommodations for students with severe food allergies will continue to be provided as needed. Students will be supervised during meal times and prohibited from sharing food and beverages unless members of the same household. That is a CDC requirement. This includes during celebrations such as birthdays and holidays. That means that shared treats such as cupcakes cannot be brought in this year. Transportation. Transportation, again, is also a aspect that is being currently developed. Students will be allowed 1 a.m. route. Whoops.
Sorry, Karen, I skipped a slide by accident. You should be all set on this one.
So what happened to the previous one? This is okay, so families will take the temperature of each student in their household and report the data on the Eduform app. We are in the process of getting this Eduform app together, and that will be also coming out soon. Students and staff will wear a face covering at all times. Staff with direct contact with students will wear gloves. Students who do not have a mask when boarding their bus will be provided with one. Students will be assigned 1 per seat unless the students reside in the same household. If students reside in the same household, they will be assigned to share their seat with the other household residents. Students will be allowed 1 a.m. route and 1 p.m. route for each student riding the school bus. No alternate arrangements will be available. Regrettably, no bus notes will be allowed. However, if you do have daycare and it will be a regular pickup or drop off, yes, you can still request daycare arrangements. Arrival and dismissal will be managed so as to permit appropriate social distancing. Parents are encouraged to drive students to and from school if feasible in order to reduce the density on the buses. If parents opt to drive students to and from school, they will still need to submit the health screening via the Eduform app.
Okay.
Fred, I've got this.
Oh, great. Okay.
Okay, so screen forward, please. Okay, so as Dr. Young alluded to earlier, all staff and students will be required to wear a face covering over their nose, mouth, and chin, except when engaged in instruction, eating, or seated at their desk or table that has been placed an appropriate distance from their peers and staff. For the elementary school, we'll be utilizing approved dividers to provide that safe social distancing between students. Face covering breaks will be built into their daily schedule. Again, while students are seated at their individual desks and/or within the confines of their protective barriers, they're able to remove their masks. So that will increase the breaks that they will have during the day. Families are responsible for taking their child's temperature each morning before they go to school. Anyone with a temperature greater than 100 degrees Fahrenheit will need to stay home for the school day as per the Department of Health guidance. Please refer to the health and safety protocols for further details, and they will be provided on the district website. Students will be trained on the proper practices for hand hygiene, respiratory hygiene, social distancing, and symptoms of COVID-19. And that'll take place during the first day of instruction. All employees will be screened daily. All persons will maintain 6 feet of social distancing while in school and on school grounds whenever appropriate. Common areas such as entrances, exits, lobbies, hallways, etc., will be a minimum 6-foot social distancing. All persons will adhere to all directional signage and other COVID-19 related materials displayed throughout the school buildings. Visitors will be limited to only those persons requiring access to school for business. Prior approval from the building administrator will be required. District will follow all CDC and Department of Health guidelines when cleaning and disinfecting all district school facilities and buses.
So to wrap up the presentation tonight, if there are any questions that are related to the reopening of schools, you can email us at a specific email, schoolreopening@berlincentral.org. Once we receive that question, it will be distributed to the appropriate department or person for your answer. But also keep in mind that we do have many of the questions that were already posed by parents and others already in a database on our website. Just go to our resource page and there'll be a Q&A answer sheet where you can see dozens and dozens of questions that were already proposed and answered for the reopening of schools. I want to thank you for responding to this particular webinar. And if you do have any other questions, please let the building administrator know, or you could also simply go to schoolreopening@berlincentral.org. Thank you everyone for coming out tonight. And our next presentation will be on August 20th at 1 p.m. Good night, everyone.